a storm, a mansion, and a secret buried beneath years of lies. She was the daughter no one wanted, framed by her stepmother, left to die in the snow. But God had other plans, because that night a Navy SEAL and his loyal dog found her and uncovered a truth powerful men would kill to keep buried. Betrayal, redemption, and a miracle written in blood and faith. This is not just a rescue, it's divine justice. Before we begin, tell us where you're watching from and subscribe for more stories of faith, courage, and the miracles God hides in the darkest places. The snow fell endlessly over Aspen Creek, Colorado, blanketing the mountains in silence so deep it seemed to swallow breath itself. The world was white and still, except for the faint flicker of light from the Carter mansion perched on the ridge, a golden wound cut into the cold. Inside that mansion, Emily Carter sat by her attic window, her fingers numb against the frost-bitten glass, watching flakes drift like ghosts across the night. She was 22, slender, with dark brown hair that framed a face too pale for her age. Her eyes, gray like winter sky, held both gentleness and exhaustion, the kind that grows from being unseen for too long. She looked fragile, but there was a quiet endurance in her posture, the kind of strength people mistake for silence. Downstairs, laughter and violin music bled through the floorboards. The annual Carter Winter Charity Gala was in full swing, an event her stepmother Claudia Carter adored. Claudia was a tall woman in her late 40s, elegant in a way that felt sharpened rather than graceful. Her beauty was cold, platinum blonde hair twisted into perfection, lips always painted the color of winter wine, eyes a glacial blue that seemed incapable of warmth. She had once been a model in Los Angeles before marrying Emily's father, Richard Carter, a widowed defense contractor with more money than affection. To Claudia, every gesture was performance, every word designed for admiration. And Emily, quiet, awkward, the ghost of Richard's first wife, was a stain she couldn't bleach from her perfect life. Emily's father, Richard, was somewhere among the guests, shaking hands, his deep voice carrying over the hum of champagne chatter. A broad-shouldered man with silver hair and a politician's smile, Richard had spent years building a reputation for precision and loyalty. Yet somewhere along the way, both had hardened into control. He rarely looked at Emily without seeing his late wife's reflection, a reminder of guilt he'd rather not feel. Since the accident 10 years ago when his wife, Sarah Carter, a decorated K-9 officer, had died in a car explosion on a snowy road, he had buried himself in business and structure. His grief had not turned him cold, it had turned him mechanical. And so Emily grew up in a house filled with everything but love. At her feet lay Shadow, the last living piece of her mother's world. The German shepherd was 13, with fur mottled gray around his muzzle and eyes that still carried a soldier's alertness. He had once served alongside Sarah, trained for search and rescue missions in mountain terrain. The years had slowed him, his hips stiff and breath shallow, but his loyalty had not aged a day. He was her confidant, her family, her reason to endure the isolation. Yet lately, Shadow had begun coughing, harsh, rattling sounds that kept her awake at night. Earlier that week, Claudia had summoned the family veterinarian. The verdict was quick and cruel. He's old, Miss Carter. His lungs are failing. Euthanasia would be merciful. Claudia had smiled politely and told the vet to schedule it. Emily had stood frozen, unable to speak, as if someone had shoved her back into that night 10 years ago when the police came to say her mother was gone. Shadow was her last link to Sarah, and now the world wanted to take him too. So tonight, while the gala drowned in music and ego, Emily moved through the empty servant hallways like a shadow herself. She wore a plain wool sweater, her hair tied loosely, her heart drumming like a trapped bird. In the laundry room near the kitchen, she found the small cabinet where veterinary supplies were stored, mostly for Claudia's show dogs. Her hands shook as she opened it. Bottles and vials gleamed under the fluorescent light. Amoxicillin 250 milligrams, she whispered. It wasn't perfect, but it was all she could manage. Emily? The voice froze her. Turning, she saw Linda, the housekeeper, a woman in her 50s, kind-faced, weary-eyed, who had served the Carters since before Emily was born. "Child, what are you doing?" Linda whispered, glancing toward the dining hall. "I need it for Shadow," Emily said softly. "He's getting worse. Please, I'll put it back once he's better." Linda's lips trembled. "You know how Mrs. Carter will react. She'll twist this against you." "I know," Emily murmured, "but if I don't try, he'll die tonight." For a moment, Linda hesitated, then stepped aside. "Hurry, I didn't see you." Emily smiled faintly, gratitude glinting through fear. She slipped the bottle into her pocket and turned to go. But fate, as it often does, waited for the cruelest possible timing. Claudia appeared in the doorway. Her gown shimmered like liquid emerald under the fluorescent light, her heels clicking with deliberate precision. "Well," she said, voice smooth as glass, "isn't this touching? The little thief and her mutt." Emily's breath caught. "It's just medicine. Shadow needs—" Claudia's laugh sliced through her words. "You're stealing from my property, in my house during my event. You'll have your mother's nerve, but none of her discipline." Richard appeared behind her, drawn by the commotion. His face, once kind, was unreadable now. "Emily, what is going on?" "She was stealing, Richard," Claudia said, eyes glinting with triumph. "I caught her red-handed." Emily's throat tightened. "Dad, I wasn't stealing. Shadow's sick. Please, you know Mom would—" "Enough." Richard's tone cut through the room. "You cannot keep clinging to that dog. This ends tonight." The silence that followed was worse than shouting. Claudia stepped closer, her perfume heavy with victory. "You want to save him so badly? Then you can leave with him, take your things, and go." The words struck like a hammer. Emily blinked, disbelief giving way to cold clarity. She looked to her father, but he turned away. Shadow, sensing the tension, pushed himself unsteadily to his feet, growling low. And that was how Emily Carter, daughter of one of Aspen Creek's wealthiest men, found herself standing outside the mansion gates minutes later, a storm rising around her. The snow bit into her skin like teeth. Shadow trembled in her arms, his breath ragged. She wrapped him in her coat and whispered, "Hang on, boy, I won't lose you too." The wind howled through the valley, a lonely sound that carried no mercy. Far below, headlights flickered along the mountain road. Someone was driving through the blizzard, unaware that destiny was about to intersect two lives adrift in the same storm. Emily took one step into the darkness, clutching Shadow close, her tears freezing before they could fall. The snow never slept, and neither did her pain. The road to Aspen Creek was nearly invisible now, swallowed by wind and snow. Emily stumbled through the drifts, her arms tightening around Shadow's trembling body. His breath came in short, painful bursts. The world had turned to a blur of white and silence. Her boots were soaked through, her fingers raw and bleeding. Every step was a decision to move forward or surrender to the cold. She whispered softly, almost to herself, "Just a little longer, boy. Hold on for me." But the wind stole her voice and threw it into the dark. Far down the mountain, a pair of headlights carved through the storm. The vehicle, a black pickup truck, moved slow but steady, its tires gripping the icy road with the precision of someone used to danger. Behind the wheel sat Ryan Walker, 35, a man whose life had been shaped by both duty and loss. He had the kind of face that looked carved from stone. Strong jawline, faint scars along his cheek from shrapnel, a few days' growth of beard shadowing his skin. His hair was dark, streaked with early silver near the temples, and his eyes, storm gray, reflected the kind of calm that comes only after surviving chaos. A former Navy SEAL, Ryan had seen things that rewired the soul. Afghanistan, Somalia, classified missions that still visited him in dreams. Since leaving active duty, he had tried to build peace in solitude, but silence was louder than gunfire. He now lived on the outskirts of Aspen Creek, in a cabin that looked toward the forest and away from people. Beside him sat Ranger, a 9-year-old German shepherd with the build of a soldier and the wisdom of an old soul. His fur was thick, sable gray, and his amber eyes missed nothing. Ranger had served 2 tours alongside Ryan, sniffing out explosives, finding wounded soldiers in desert ruins, once even saving Ryan's life after a blast by dragging him 30 yards through sand and smoke. Since retirement, the dog had developed arthritis in one leg, but remained alert, noble, and deeply bonded to his handler. Ryan often said Ranger was the last piece of himself that still knew what purpose felt like. The wipers struggled against the snow when suddenly Ranger lifted his head, ears pricking. A low growl rumbled in his chest, a warning, but not of danger, more of urgency. Ryan glanced sideways. "What is it, buddy?" Ranger pressed his nose against the fogged window and let out one sharp bark. Ryan squinted into the swirling white ahead and saw her. A dark figure on the roadside, hunched over, barely visible through the wind. Without hesitation, he eased the truck onto the shoulder and killed the engine. "Stay here," he murmured, but Ranger had already leapt across him, tail stiff, ready. The cold hit Ryan like a physical wall when he opened the door. Snow whipped across his face, stinging his skin. He moved forward, boots crunching through the drift. "Hey!" he shouted above the wind. "You all right?" The figure didn't respond, just huddled tighter around something. When he got closer, he saw the truth. A young woman, soaked to the bone, her arms wrapped around a limp German shepherd. Her lips were blue, her hair frozen in icy strands against her cheeks. She looked up, startled, eyes wide with fear. "Don't come closer," she gasped, her voice barely a whisper. "He's sick. Please, just go." Ryan stopped a few feet away, lowering his tone. "Easy. I'm not here to hurt you." He crouched, snow piling on his shoulders. "Let me help." "I don't know you," she said weakly. "You don't have to," Ryan replied. "But your dog doesn't have much time, and neither do you." The dog stirred faintly, letting out a weak whine. Ryan saw the cloudy mucus around its nose, the labored breathing. Pneumonia, severe. He'd seen it before in working dogs overseas, cold, wet lungs giving up inch by inch. "We have to move now." "I can't." Emily tried to stand, her legs buckled. Ryan caught her before she fell, his arms firm and steady. She felt the heat of his body, even through the cold. "Truck's warm," he said. "Let me get you both out of this." She hesitated for only a second, then nodded, clutching Shadow tighter. Ryan lifted the dog effortlessly, his muscles moving with quiet strength. "Easy, old boy," he muttered. "You're safe now." Ranger waited by the open truck door, tail wagging once, then standing guard as Ryan placed Shadow on the back seat, wrapping him in a thick blanket. Emily climbed in beside him, shivering violently. The warmth of the truck hit her like fire and pain all at once. Ryan started the engine. "We'll go to my cabin," he said. "Closest shelter for miles." Emily's voice cracked. "Why are you helping me?" He didn't look at her. "Because once someone helped me when I didn't deserve it either." The drive was slow, the tires cutting through inches of snow. Ranger sat between them, occasionally glancing back at Shadow and then at Emily, as if silently assuring her that this strange man was trustworthy. Emily pressed her fingers into Shadow's fur, whispering fragments of comfort. Ryan focused on the road, his jaw tight. After 20 minutes, they reached a small log cabin hidden among the trees. Smoke still rose faintly from the chimney, a sign Ryan had left the fire running before heading into town. He pulled up beside the porch and opened her door. "Stay close," he said. "It's slippery." Inside, the cabin was Spartan but warm. Stone fireplace, wooden floors, a single couch, shelves lined with books and gear. A rack by the wall held Ryan's old SEAL uniform, still pressed, though dust gathered on the metals. The air smelled faintly of cedar and coffee. Ryan carried Shadow to a thick rug near the fire. "He's burning up," he said, touching the dog's nose. "We'll need to dry him fast." He grabbed towels from a chest and began rubbing Shadow down with gentle, practiced hands. Emily knelt beside him, doing the same, her eyes full of both fear and gratitude. When the dog began to breathe easier, she looked up. You know how to handle this?" Ryan gave a faint, almost reluctant smile. "He used to work with dogs, the military kind." "That explains the scars," she said softly. He shrugged. "Theirs are worse." She looked at him fully for the first time, noticing the lines at the corners of his eyes, the hint of exhaustion beneath the calm exterior. There was something steady about him, but also haunted, like a man who'd learned to carry ghosts instead of fighting them. Ranger settled by Shadow's side, curling protectively around the older dog. Emily watched, her heart aching at the quiet bond between them. "Thank you," she whispered. Ryan nodded once. "Don't thank me yet. Storm's getting worse. We might be snowed in till morning." Emily blinked, realizing how far from home she was, how little she had left. She tried to speak, but exhaustion dragged her under. The last thing she saw before sleep claimed her was Ryan throwing another log into the fire, his silhouette framed by orange light, and Ranger keeping watch like a silent guardian. Outside, the wind howled through the trees, rattling the windows like a warning. Somewhere beyond that storm in the Carter mansion, Claudia Carter poured herself another glass of wine and smiled as she signed a document, an order she didn't want anyone to read. Morning crept slowly into the valley, filtered through curtains of gray cloud and the crackling orange light of the fireplace. The storm had quieted, but snow still drifted lazily against the cabin windows. The world outside was silent, frozen in the hush that follows violence. Inside, the air smelled of wood smoke, coffee, and the faint metallic scent of dried fur. Emily awoke on the couch, wrapped in a thick wool blanket. Her body ached, her throat burned, but the first thing she noticed was warmth, a feeling she hadn't known in years. For a moment, she let herself pretend she was home. Then the memory returned, the mansion, Claudia's voice, the snow. Her chest tightened. Ryan Walker stood by the window, his broad back turned to her, framed against the pale dawn. He had changed into a faded gray sweater and jeans, the casualness somehow making him look even more like a soldier at rest, yet never off guard. His hair was tousled, damp from melting snow, and a faint shadow of stubble darkened his jaw. He held a coffee mug in one hand, the other resting against the window frame as if listening to something only he could hear. When he turned, his eyes met hers, steady, assessing, but softened by quiet concern. "You're awake," he said, his voice low, gravelly, but not unkind. "You scared me last night. You were out cold." Emily sat up slowly, clutching the blanket tighter. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to be a burden." He shook his head. "You're not. But next time, maybe don't walk into a blizzard with a dying dog." The edge in his tone was protective, not cruel. Her eyes darted to the rug by the fire where Shadow lay curled beside Ranger. The older dog was still weak, but breathing more steadily. His fur had dried, and his chest rose in gentle rhythm. Ranger, ever watchful, rested with his muzzle near Shadow's paws, occasionally flicking his ears at each breath. The sight drew a quiet smile from Emily. "He's better," she whispered. "Yeah," Ryan said, "dehydrated, hypothermic, and with a mild case of pneumonia, but he's fighting. Tough old guy." Emily's voice trembled. "He belonged to my mother. I couldn't let him die." Ryan nodded. "I figured. Most people wouldn't risk their life for an animal, but you're not most people." Before she could answer, a gentle knock came at the door, a surprise in the middle of the snow-covered woods. Ranger's head lifted instantly, his ears pricking, a low growl rumbling in his throat. Ryan's posture changed. Calm turned to readiness. He set down his coffee and approached the door, in silence. Outside stood Ethan Cross, Ryan's oldest friend and former teammate. Ethan was 37, tall, with sharp features, and the kind of posture that spoke of discipline even in retirement. His hair was dark blonde, trimmed close, a thin scar cut diagonally across his chin, a souvenir from an ambush in Kandahar. He wore a thick brown jacket lined with shearling, and snow still clung to his boots. Despite the hard exterior, his eyes, deep green, carried an easy humor, though today they looked serious. "Morning, brother," Ethan said as Ryan opened the door. "You got a storm of trouble brewing up here?" Ryan's expression hardened. "How'd you find me?" Ethan gave a crooked grin. "You think I don't know where you hide when the world gets too loud?" "The sheriff called. Said the roads are closed and there's been a formal report filed, something about a missing family member. Thought you might want to know." Emily froze where she sat, pulse hammering. "That's about me, isn't it?" Ryan nodded slightly, eyes narrowing. "Who filed it?" Ethan stepped inside, closing the door against the cold. "Your stepmother. Claimed you stole prescription meds and fled. She's playing it big. Told local news outlets you're unstable. There's even talk she hired a private investigator out of Denver." Emily felt the blood drain from her face. "She's not going to stop until she ruins me." Ethan glanced at her, his gaze softening. "You must be Emily. I'm Ethan." He offered a polite nod. "Ryan doesn't usually pick up strays, so you must have earned your place here." "Strays?" she echoed, unsure whether to smile. Ryan shot him a warning look. "Cut it out." Ethan chuckled, then turned serious. "We've got a problem. Claudia Carter isn't just rich, she's connected. Her lawyer, a guy named Thomas Jennings, has influence with law enforcement. If he frames Emily, she won't get a fair hearing. Ryan crossed his arms. Jennings, I've heard that name before. Ethan nodded. Yeah, you have. He used to handle defense contracts for your last unit sponsor company. Dirty money, offshore transfers. Guess who the CEO was? Ryan's jaw clenched. Richard Carter. Emily stared, stunned. My father? Your father? Ethan confirmed grimly. Looks like your family's been moving in some dark circles. Maybe your mother found out too much before she died. The words hit like a blade through silence. Emily's breath caught. She saw again the police that night, the burning wreck, her father's hollow expression. You think my mother's death wasn't an accident? Ethan hesitated, glancing at Ryan. I think it's time we stop pretending coincidences are innocent. Ryan moved to the fire, staring into it for a long moment. Ethan, get in touch with your contact at the Bureau, Mark Sandoval. If this is what I think it is, we'll need leverage before they come knocking. Ethan nodded. Already texted him on the way up. He'll call once he verifies what Jennings is doing. Emily sat silent, her fingers gripping the blanket, her mind spinning between fear and fury. Shadow stirred beside her and nudged her hand, grounding her. She whispered, If my mother was killed because of them, I need to know the truth. Ryan turned back to her. His voice was steady, but something fierce burned behind his calm. Then we'll find it, but you can't face them alone. Their eyes met across the flicker of firelight, a fragile alliance forming in the shadows. Outside, the snow had stopped falling, replaced by a low fog creeping along the valley. Ranger gave a short bark, breaking the stillness, his ears tilted toward the door, hackles rising. Ethan moved closer to the window and froze. Ryan, he said quietly, we've got company. Ryan joined him, peering through the frosted glass. Down the narrow forest road, half hidden by trees, headlights glowed faintly. Too still to be travelers. That's not the sheriff, Ryan muttered. They're watching us. Emily's heart skipped. Who? Someone who doesn't want you alive to tell your story, Ethan said grimly. Ryan reached for the pistol holstered under his jacket. Then we stay quiet, lights low, and wait to see if they move. He met Emily's frightened gaze and said softly, Whatever happens, stay behind me. Outside, the engine revved once, headlights flared, and then went dark. The wind had died, but the forest was not silent. Every creak of branch, every distant crunch of snow sounded amplified in the stillness. Inside the cabin, the firelight trembled across the wooden walls, painting shifting shadows on the faces of the three people who now shared the same fate. Ryan stood by the window, motionless, his hand resting lightly on the pistol holstered under his sweater. Ethan crouched beside the coffee table, scanning the terrain through a compact pair of night vision binoculars. Emily sat near the hearth, one hand on Shadow's fur and the other gripping the edge of the couch so tightly her knuckles whitened. Ranger lay beside the door, completely alert, his ears twitching at each whisper of the wind. Ryan's voice broke the silence. How many? Ethan's tone was calm, clinical. 2 cars, 4 men, maybe 5. No police markings, no lights. Military-style movement. Slow, synchronized, but trying too hard not to be noticed. Private contractors, Ryan said flatly. Jennings must have called in his own people. Emily looked up, her face pale in the dim light. You think they're here for me? They're not here to talk, Ethan muttered. Those aren't the kind of men who carry conversation. Ryan turned from the window, his expression composed but eyes sharp as broken glass. We don't panic. We stay quiet, keep the lights low, and wait for them to make the first move. If they breach, we don't fight to kill. We fight to survive. Understand?" Emily nodded, though her heart thudded so loudly she was sure they could all hear it. Her mind spiraled between terror and disbelief. She had spent her life being invisible, yet now strangers in the dark were hunting her. Outside, the faint sound of snow shifting betrayed movement. Ranger's growl deepened, a sound so low it vibrated through the floor. Ryan raised a finger. Silence. Then a flash of light swept across the windows. Ethan moved instantly, switching off the firelight with the poker, plunging the room into near darkness. Only the dying embers glowed faintly, painting the air red. "Front porch," Ethan whispered. "They're circling." Ryan gestured for Emily to move behind the heavy oak desk in the corner. "Stay down, no matter what happens. Don't come out until I say." The next sound was faint, a metallic click at the door handle, then a heavy knock. "Mr. Walker," a man's voice called, smooth but carrying authority. "This is Sheriff Miller. Open up." Ethan's eyebrows shot up. "Sheriff Miller's in Florida this week. Fishing tournament." Ryan's mouth curved into a humorless smile. "Impersonation, classic move." He called back, voice even. "Come back in the morning, Sheriff. I'm busy." There was a pause, then the voice dropped its pretense. "Busy hiding a fugitive?" Ethan mouthed. "They know." Ryan didn't respond. Instead, he moved toward the back door, silent as a predator. "They'll try to flank us," he whispered to Ethan. "Take the right window. You'll see a muzzle flash. Suppress it." Ethan nodded and slipped into position, drawing his own handgun from under his coat. Years of combat had made their teamwork instinctive. They needed no further words. Outside, boots crunched against the snow. The rhythm was slow, methodical. Ryan counted 4 distinct patterns. Professionals. He exhaled slowly, centering himself as his old instincts returned, the rhythm of heartbeat to breath, breath to trigger. Then one sound shattered the tension, the sharp crack of glass. A side window broke inward. Ranger exploded into motion, barking deep and fierce. Ryan ducked low as a small smoke canister rolled across the floor, hissing. "Gas!" Ethan shouted, grabbing a blanket and tossing it over the canister. Ryan kicked it toward the fireplace, the flames devouring the thick smoke before it could fill the room. "Move!" he barked. The front door burst open under a heavy boot. 2 men in dark tactical gear flooded in, weapons raised. Ryan's first shot shattered the lantern above their heads, plunging the entryway into darkness. The second grazed a shoulder. The man went down with a cry. Ethan fired once, precise and low, targeting a leg. A third figure stumbled backward out the door. Emily cowered behind the desk, clutching shadow, heart pounding so hard it hurt. She heard every sound as though it were happening inside her chest. The gunfire, the shouts, Ranger's growls, Ryan's low command, "Cover left, now!" In less than 20 seconds, the room went still again. 2 men lay on the floor, alive but disarmed, groaning. The others had fled into the tree line. Ryan pressed against the wall, breathing hard, the calm efficiency of a soldier fading into human exhaustion. Ethan stood beside him, scanning the door. "You okay?" "Fine," Ryan said, "but they'll regroup. This wasn't an arrest. They were testing response time." Emily stood shakily, still holding shadow. "What do we do now?" Ryan holstered his weapon and looked at her, his tone gentler now. "Now, we disappear, before they bring more." Ethan frowned. You've got a plan. Always, Ryan said, moving to a cabinet near the back wall. He pulled out a folded topographical map, the edges yellowed from years of use. There's an old ranger station 10 miles north, abandoned since the wildfire 2 summers ago. It's defensible and off-grid. Ethan studied the map. We'll need to move before sunrise. Snow's deep, but the truck can make it halfway. Ryan nodded. Pack what you can carry. Emily, wrap Shadow in my coat. Ranger will run point. As Emily prepared, her hands trembled, not just from fear, but from the shock of seeing violence up close. Yet when she looked at Ryan and Ethan, 2 men shaped by war yet still capable of gentleness, she felt a flicker of something fierce inside her. Resolve. She wouldn't run forever. While they gathered supplies, Ethan crouched beside one of the downed attackers and checked his vest. He pulled out a small patch stitched with a silver falcon emblem. Private security, he muttered. Falcon Ridge Group, Denver-based, ex-military mercenaries. Ryan's eyes darkened. Jennings again. He's using hired guns. Ethan pocketed the patch. This goes deeper than family drama. Ryan turned to Emily. He wants to silence you. That means whatever your mother knew, whatever she left behind, still matters. Emily swallowed hard. My mother kept a safe in her old police office. She once told me it held something important, something she could never show my father. It was sealed after she died. Ryan's gaze sharpened. Where? In town, at the old precinct on Maple Street. Ethan exhaled slowly. Then that's our next move, after we get her somewhere safe. Ryan nodded, gripping his rifle. We move before first light. Outside, the forest seemed to hold its breath. The remaining attackers regrouped among the trees, their radios crackling faintly. One voice, deep, cold, commanding, cut through the static. They're moving north. Let them. We'll intercept at the station. Jennings wants them alive. As the cabin lights dimmed, Ryan glanced one last time at the window, his reflection flickering in the glass. He didn't know that the man giving those orders wasn't Jennings at all, but someone far closer to home. Dawn broke cold and colorless over the Colorado highlands. The snow had hardened overnight into a crust that cracked beneath every step, echoing across the valley like brittle glass. Ryan's truck rumbled slowly along the forest road, its tires carving narrow paths through the frost. Inside the cab, silence hung heavier than the fog outside. Emily sat in the passenger seat, Shadow curled against her legs under a thick blanket. Ethan rode in the back, rifle across his knees, eyes scanning the horizon. Ranger stood upright, head between the front seats, gaze fixed on the distant town. The highway signs emerged one by one through the mist. Maple Street, 4 miles. Emily's heart clenched as they approached. The old precinct sat at the far edge of town, long abandoned after a fire gutted the upper floors 5 years earlier. Her mother, Sarah Carter, had worked there as a K-9 unit officer before the explosion that took her life. The thought of walking back into that ruin felt like trespassing on a grave. Ryan noticed her tension. "You don't have to go inside," he said, voice calm, steady as stone. "I do," Emily whispered. "If my mother hid something there, she wanted me to find it. She never left things unfinished." Ethan gave a nod of approval. "She sounds like you." The town appeared slowly, quiet, ghostly. Most of the windows were frosted shut, the streets empty. The precinct was worse. Blackened stone walls streaked with soot. The sign, Aspen Creek Police Department, hanging crooked over the entrance. A line of yellow caution tape flapped weakly in the wind. Ryan parked behind what used to be the evidence wing and stepped out, his boots sinking deep into the snow. The air smelled faintly of ash and rust. "Stay alert," he told Ethan. "If Falcon Ridge was tracking us, they'll expect this stop." Ethan nodded, chambered around, and swept the perimeter. Inside, the station was half collapsed, sunlight filtering through gaps in the roof. Desks lay overturned, charred files scattered across the floor. Emily moved cautiously down the hallway, memories flickering in each shadow. Her mother's laughter, the smell of coffee, the jingle of dog tags on polished floors. She stopped at a corner office, its door still bearing a melted brass plate, S. Carter, K9 Division. Her breath caught. This was hers. Ryan knelt by the door, prying it open with his knife. The hinges groaned, revealing a room half consumed by fire. Shelves bowed under ash, the walls were streaked black. Yet beneath the desk, a steel box was embedded into the floor, the edges scorched but intact. A safe. "That it?" Ethan asked, stepping in. Emily nodded, dropping to her knees. "The combination's her birthday," she murmured, fingers trembling. "She told me once, 'If I'm ever gone, remember April 19th. I thought she meant grief. Maybe she meant this." The lock clicked. The door swung open with a low hiss of air. Inside was a single envelope, yellowed by heat, but sealed in plastic. Emily pulled it free. Written across the front in her mother's careful handwriting were the words, "For Emily. Trust only the one who fought beside the wolves." Ryan's eyes narrowed. That phrase, "beside the wolves," that's a SEAL recon motto. She was working with military contracts. Ethan frowned. Jennings again. I bet she uncovered whatever dirty deal Carter Enterprises had with Falcon Ridge. Emily tore open the envelope. Inside were photographs, grainy surveillance stills of warehouse meetings, trucks marked with government insignias, crates labeled as animal transport. But the crates were full of weapons. The final photo showed two men shaking hands, Thomas Jennings and Richard Carter. Her world tilted. My father, he was part of it. Ryan's jaw tightened. He wasn't just part of it, he financed it. Before Emily could speak, a sharp sound cracked from outside, the echo of an engine. Ethan darted to the window. "We've got incoming, SUVs blacked out." Ryan's instincts flared. "Falcon Ridge?" Ethan peered closer. No, one vehicle, looked civilian. Moments later, the door creaked open. A man stepped inside, tall, wrapped in a heavy charcoal coat dusted with snow. His hair was silver, his expression grave. It was Richard Carter. Emily froze. "Dad?" He looked older than she remembered, lines etched deep around eyes that once seemed kind. But the gaze was hollow now, empty of warmth. "Emily," he said softly, "you shouldn't have come here." Ryan's stance shifted subtly, protective. "She has every right to know the truth." Richard sighed. "You think I wanted this? Your mother was digging into contracts she didn't understand. She was going to expose national security files. I tried to stop her, so did Jennings, but she wouldn't listen." "She died for telling the truth," Emily whispered. "She died because she left me no choice," Richard said. The silence hit harder than any gunshot. Ethan raised his weapon. "You just confessed, Carter. That's enough for an arrest." Richard smiled faintly. "You think I came unprepared?" From the corner, a faint movement. Two Falcon Ridge agents emerged, rifles drawn. Ryan pivoted, aiming fast. The air tensed, each second stretching like a wire about to snap. "Don't," Richard warned. "If you fire, They shoot her first. Emily stepped forward, voice shaking. You're not going to hurt me. You still have to live with yourself. Her father's face twisted. Pride, pain, fury. You sound just like her. And then Ranger moved. With a guttural bark, the German shepherd lunged from the shadows, slamming into the nearest gunman. A shot went wild, tearing through the wall. Ryan fired once, clean and controlled. The second attacker fell. Ethan swept in to disarm the first. Richard stumbled backward, raising his pistol, eyes full of despair. You don't understand, Emily. Everything I did was to protect this family. Emily stepped closer, tears freezing on her cheeks. No, Dad, you protected yourself. She reached into the safe and held up the photos. These will end you. His hand trembled on the trigger, then slowly he lowered it. The fight drained out of him, replaced by something hollow. Remorse, maybe, or surrender. You really are her daughter, he whispered. Outside, sirens wailed in the distance. Ethan's earlier call to Mark Sandoval had reached its mark. FBI vehicles tore through the snow, their blue lights reflecting off the ruins. Within minutes, agents stormed in, cuffing Richard Carter and securing the scene. Emily sank to the floor, Shadow pressing against her side, Ranger lying quietly beside them. Ryan crouched next to her, placing a steady hand on her shoulder. It's over, he said softly. She looked up, eyes red but steady. No, it's just beginning. My mother deserves her name back. And every dog, every soldier used by people like Jennings, they deserve justice, too. Ryan smiled faintly. Then we'll see it done. Weeks later, when the snow melted and the valley breathed again, Emily stood outside a new building sign, Second Chance Shepherd Rescue. Behind her, Ranger and Shadow played in the field. Ryan and Ethan were helping rebuild the kennels, laughter breaking through the spring air. For the first time in years, the world felt alive. But far away, in a Denver office bathed in shadow, a man placed a sealed envelope on his desk. It bore the same handwriting as Sarah Carter's and a single line, "The wolves are not all gone." Sometimes God doesn't send miracles wrapped in light. He sends them through storms, through people who've been broken and dogs who refuse to give up. Emily's fight for truth wasn't just a battle against corruption. It was a reminder that faith can survive even in the darkest winter. When the world turns cold and everything seems lost, God often places someone or something on our path to lead us home. So if you're watching this tonight, take a moment to believe again. Believe that love can heal, that loyalty still matters, and that redemption is never too far away. Because somewhere out there in your own story, a small miracle is already on its way, waiting for the courage in your heart to find it. Before you go, we'd love to hear from you. Share this story with someone who needs hope. Leave a comment telling us where you're watching from and what moment touched you most. And if you believe that God still works in quiet, mysterious ways, please subscribe and join our family of faith, courage, and second chances. May God bless you, protect your home, guide your heart, and keep you warm, even through the coldest storms.